So, again, I did tell you that we have some phenomenal individuals, and I mean phenomenal, exceptional, dynamic, all of those attributes that just highlight women in leadership that are doing things in a powerful manner. So we have a dynamic panel for you today. So first I want to talk about our moderator. Our moderator is Dr. Kristen Donnelly, MSW as well, MDiv and PhD. She is an award-winning, 4-time TEDx speaker. She's phenomenal. You have to pay attention to her LinkedIn and all of that. She gives them some great things, and she's writing a book right now on burnout, which I'm so excited to read. International empathy educator and researcher with 2 decades of experience in helping people understand the beauty in difference and the power of inclusivity. Thank you, Dr. Donnelly, for being our speaker, our moderator today. Then we have the dynamic, the tenacious. We're going to do this. We're going to do the tenacious Tanisha Banks, Doctor of Public Health, Executive Vice President, Chief Quality and Performance Officer at WIB Services, formerly Executive Director, CEO, President of Tabor Children's Services. Dr. Banks comes to WIB with a doctorate in public health and over 2 decades of experience in executive roles, which includes her most immediate past role as the President and CEO of Tabor Children's Services, a WIB's affiliate centrally located in Philadelphia. In her role at WIBS, Dr. Banks is responsible for helping the organization better understand its data and how to use that data to drive organization decision-making. Data is our friend, everybody. Data is our friend. It tells us, it makes projections for us. Like, data is definitely our friend. And she's also the person who made space for me, so thank you. We also have Dr. Gloria Okolome, the gracious Dr. Gloria Okolome. She is an accomplished educator, scholar, and higher education administrator with 20+ years of experience. She is currently serving as the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Delaware Valley University, where she is responsible for all aspects of academic affairs for the university, including strategic planning, the faculty, development, implementation of new programs, curriculum, academic support for undergraduates, graduates, and continuing and professional studies. She also just finished her doctorate at Eastern University, where her dissertation was around emotional intelligence and leadership. So thank you so much. And then we have, I don't know why I closed this. I feel like this young lady, I can just give a introduction to her with no problem. But we have the beautiful Gifty Umo. She is the founder of Girls Leading Africa, a nonprofit organization in rural Nigeria that seeks to improve the lives of teenage girls and young mothers by providing economic and educational opportunities. She has built a career in nonprofit sector, working with several organizations in Nigeria and the United States of America to nurture and improve access to opportunities for girls and women by creating platforms for them to attain their full potential. And finally, the beautiful Brenda Bagonis Cook is an investment advisor, representative, and independent financial planner in her practice, Asset Financial Services. Since 1990, Brenda has been engaging with families, with clients, to better plan for the future, from simple budget planning through complete financial advisory plans. So ladies, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Please take it away.
Fantastic. Am I supposed to talk into this? God, okay, amazing. Guten Morgen, everybody. I know you've been sitting and listening for quite a while, so we're going to try to keep this dynamic. I have such wise women up here. We're going to make sure that you've got time to ask questions as well. So a little bit, just kind of an introduction to tune your brain into what we're going to be talking about. So all of us up here work with people, and our guess is that you do too, because every business is made up of people. So I'm a small business owner, 2nd-generation family ownership, and the most stressful thing every day isn't figuring out my budget. It's figuring out how to make everybody get along just a little bit better. So I run a division that helps people do that. And all of these women in their own ways deal with humans every single day while being humans themselves. And that may sound simple, but we all know that being a human is the hardest job in the world. It's real difficult to figure out how to do life. And so rooms like this and conversations like this are so important because we need each other. And we need wisdom from each other because, spoiler alert, as I say to the youths that I work with, none of us know what we're doing. I definitely thought adulthood looked a lot different than it does as I'm scraping 40. Someone promised me jetpacks. Anyway, so what I'm gonna go down here, we've got some great questions about mentoring, some real wisdom on this panel about how to work with some intergenerational spaces. And then, because especially post-lockdown, this is the thing we need to talk about the most. We're gonna talk about boundaries, burnout, and work-life dynamics, just a little bit. And then we'll wrap up by giving some tips on how we've all grown our own leadership. So set your brains. That's what we're talking about. Speaking of mentoring and wise women, my dear Gifty. Gifty spends a lot of her time mentoring young women. I've known Gifty we're going on 7 years now, I think. So she does it internationally, and so I want the global perspective here. When you think about how we handle mentoring, either building the program or whatever, what are your 3 tips for how we can think about it as people who don't do it as often as you?
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Christine. The first thing I would say is mentoring doesn't have to be toxic. And when it comes to women mentoring younger women, I have noticed a trend, and this is a young millennial speaking. I have noticed a trend where women who have had a hard time climbing the leadership ladder in their time actually think that it has to be the same for now. So leadership doesn't have to be toxic. When we talk about mentoring, it also has to do with flexibility. This current generation, it's a very unique generation that we have all seen, whether it's in our families or even in the workspace. So there is a need to be flexible with mentoring with this generation. And we're talking about the people. The people are important, and if the people are important, and if we are looking at building sustainable institutions with women in them, we have to prioritize mentoring. We have to prioritize mentoring. We have to go a little bit above and beyond from what the traditional mentoring status quo has always been, to intentionally looking out for young talent, including women or young women who would naturally not speak in the room, right, and highlight that. And I think I'll pause for now and then continue.
I love it. That's such a great point. I really love the point that it has been a pattern, and I'll say I've seen it in my own life, where it's incredibly difficult to be a lady in the world. And there have been women that when they reach a certain point in their career, pull up the ladder behind them. And there's this belief that it needs to be as hard for me as it was for them.
Exactly.
And all that does is make me leave.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like it's unconscious. Like women aren't even investigating that themselves. So I love that you brought up that point. Brenda, I see you nodding a lot. Can you offer?
Well, I think the leader is a leader because constantly she paves the way.
Okay, yeah.
Role modeling and the mentoring, role modeling it, being it, learning it, and then just sharing it with that next person or people, because then leadership will bubble up to the top anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Anybody else want to speak on this?
Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and getting me out of meetings. This is a lot more fun. I describe meetings as hours of our lives that we'll never get back. So for those of you who run meetings, please make them short, brief, where you can. Yep. And having said that, I'm in education and we don't do anything short or brief. But I would actually say for us as women, mentorship has to now be more about power. And I know we kind of wrestle a little bit with power in terms of, but I think about my career and a lot of sort of women who mentored had a lot of like good advice. It was warm and fuzzy, but if I'm being honest, it didn't get me where I needed to go. And many of us in this room, we have power, we have agency, right? So as Gifty said, maybe that young person who would never step up, but you see something, then mentorship is also like giving them a responsibility or something that elevates them a little bit and let other people see their talent. So I would just sort of challenge us as women to put a little bit of the power and agency we have behind our mentoring versus just saying, okay, you're doing a good job. Let me encourage you, be a shoulder to cry on. So I've just been intentional about that when I'm trying to mentor, and sometimes it freaks people out. Like, wait, you want me to do what? I'm like, because I see it in you. Yeah. I know you can do it, so I'm going to open the door for you and let you walk through it. Give you that opportunity.
Yeah, and God, that can be terrifying for a lot of people because that can scrape up against some control issues as well. Because what we're talking about is emotional and task delegation, and that's real rough for some folks. Yeah, you were gonna say.
Yeah, I also think, hi everyone, thanks for having me. I agree, better than a meeting. But I also think it's about keeping your eyes open and getting rid of constructs that are in our minds about what talent looks like and making sure you're listening and looking. I mean, Monique, where's the marvelous Monique, is one of those. She gave me a little shout out, and that was because at Tabor, she wasn't able to shine. So I had to move some things out of the way so that her talent could shine and she could succeed in her own way.
Yep.
And I think that's not about me as the mentor and more about listening and observing and paying attention to her as the mentee.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Yes, absolutely. Clap. These women are fantastic. We were saying this sparked something else in me. My brother and I are, as I said, second generation leaders. And one of the conversations that we have a lot is how do you recognize potential, but you don't put your definition of potential onto other people? So like we've promoted a lot of people at our organization that completely, frankly, we should not have. It was rude of us. Like they were not, either we didn't equip them or it wasn't their joy or something else. And then we have to start writing them up for like not executing their job. Well, what responsibility did I have in that? What didn't I do to do that? And what we discovered over the last couple of years we've been doing this is that we often just decided that because somebody thought a little bit like us, they would be us. Lie. We also didn't recognize our own power structure that no one would turn down a promotion. And so so we're in there as the two incredibly privileged owners' kids before we set ownership and saying, well, we want to pay you more money and it's going to be more responsibility. Can you handle it? Find me a person who's going to say no. But I didn't do the due diligence at all. And I put them in a position to fail. And that's on me. And that, I think, is a lot of what, it's intentional mentoring. It's intentionally identifying people who they really are and not who you want them to be entirely. And that's hard. Have you guys had any experience with that, any of you, that you'd love to speak to really quick so I'm not solo feeling weird?
Yes.
Awesome.
So coming into the US as an international student and having to navigate what leadership looks like and totally different. I grew up in Nigeria, and what it looks like, you know, in a well-developed country, I have had to stand on the shoulders of women like Dr. Christine, who have held my hand and walked with me through the journey. And I am happy in all of our conversation, nobody mentioned referring them to trainings, because for many, and all of my life, I have had to attend 1,001 trainings that don't end up in action steps, which is the reality of what many mentoring programs or many mentoring relationships have been. Oh, I know of this training, you should attend. But how does that relate to what growing that young woman's leadership skill, right? So it is being intentional in identifying what your power is and using that power to speak up for them when they are not in the room. And I define that as what true mentoring is, because it's almost like preparing a child to succeed rather than preparing a child to fail. So if I accumulate all of these articles from different conferences, how does that add to my leadership when I am not given a chance to showcase what that leadership skill is?
Cool, we can just leave now. I love that point. I mean, how many of us go to useless trainings? How many of us go to useless meetings? I'm a trainer, and I'll tell you, I go to useless trainings. I do my best to not conduct useless trainings. But I was thinking when you said the meeting thing, was That joke badge you can get, like a gift that says survived another meeting that could have been an email. Like I'd really like to wear that badge every day. So I say all of that because one of the things I think we've identified and haven't said out loud, but let's say it, is that this, as Gifty did say, this generation coming up is different. Every single generation is different. So I study generations and I teach on multi-generational workspaces. And so I want to set this question up just a little bit, if I can, panelists. Every generation is its own culture. And you may think generations don't matter completely, like everyone's allowed to have their opinion. But I can tell you as a social scientist, how old you were when you experienced certain things changes how you experience the world. So I was a freshman in college when 9/11 happened. I see 9/11 a lot differently than my parents and a lot differently than my brother who was a freshman in high school. So there's those things that are in it. So things that are affecting generations now, when you entered the workforce, what kind of parents you have, if you know what a fax machine is, a VCR. Did you have to buy an external CD burner to make your mixtapes? Have you downloaded a virus onto your computer with LimeWire? Were you in college when lockdowns happened? Where were you when what was happening in the world when friends of yours enlisted or when you enlisted? These are things that affect what's going on. And so it's very easy to make fun of people. Lord knows we all do. It's very easy to lean into stereotypes, but everybody's life experience is valid. And we have to be real curious about generations, especially now. And if we want to do the mentoring, we need to be curious about people's life experiences. So saying all of that, one of the elements of generations that are kind of changing right now is how we interact with the workplace and also like management structures. You know, like one of the things I see on LinkedIn a lot is like people are like, employees have too much power now, which I find to be a fear-based answer and not a productive answer. But it's true that it's scary. Like hybrid is weird for some people, all this kind of stuff. So as the only person in here not in like education or nonprofit, Brenda, can I ask you, especially, yes, talk to me, Brenda. What
Not a good mentor.
help us understand in like a day-to-day office environment.
Right.
What kind of changes are you seeing? What struggles are y'all having?
Yeah, well, I work with my sons, which is an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
And he is 42, so that puts him in the
Millennial. Yep.
the millennial, which is very different than the X and Y. And
Correct.
Z.
Yep.
However, I was really going to say, actually, principles and values matter most.
Mm.
And I love what Tanisha said about listening, because you can mentor all day long, but if you're not asking questions and finding out who that person is that you are bringing in, because they're going to have strengths that you do not have, and they're going to have youth, let me tell you, they're going to have youth that you no longer have. You may have wisdom, but they keep you from getting comfy or uncomfortably comfortable and stale in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so the youth can bring a lot of excitement to it if you allow it. And that's why the dictatorship type management style, which I'm sure you'll get to, doesn't work. I don't know if I answered the question.
You totally did.
I wanted to do it quick.
I love it. Brenda, you're
Quick and
crushing
dirty,
this.
baby.
You are crushing this. I have a follow-up question. How, as a self-identified older leader, do you create space for that youth to shine? Do you have tips on that? Because I think people struggle with that.
Just be quiet.
Okay.
Because he has no problem in sharing with his mother and his partner.
Okay.
Right. So, but I think if you are going to have meetings, whether it's with one or and you're watching leadership bubble up, as I spoke, or many, they all have different strengths, but a lot of them may kind of work off of each other, and then together you lead. Together you're bringing it all together, and that's the management style of collusion or collaborativeness that maybe we didn't see back in the day with the employer and the boss saying, be here, do this, do that kind of thing. And I think women being nurturers and which does not take away from the power of the brain, the mind, the heart, the soul, everything. They can have such a way to keep this progress going in the future without really pushing it down anything. I think it's just a natural,
Yeah, I would agree.
and we all grow that way. And without that, we don't grow.
Yeah. Please do.
I love what you said about
Do
principles
you?
and values. Yes, I absolutely do. Because, and I might give the answer that's a bit, being in higher ed, I think the whole idea of, wait, do we need to leave? That's perfect. No, I'm kidding.
Do you really want to go back
in-
to meetings?
No,
Yeah,
no,
there
no,
you
no, no. In higher ed, especially in you overseeing faculty, there's always been that we're all at the same level. So I think in education, at least in higher ed, it's not as hierarchical with that struggle. But when you talked about principles and values, I don't think any one generation has the right answer, right?
No.
If you think, I think it was, I love this quote. It was Mark Twain who said, you know, when I was young, I was, you know, my parents knew nothing. And by the time I was 40, I was impressed by how much they had learned. And it's like, okay, because that's and I even tell my teenage children now that your children are going to laugh at all the things you think you're cool now, that you think are cool now. Like, that's just the way life works. Being in higher education, one of the things we heard loud and clear in recent, you know, everybody was online for their education. We were coming back and we started bringing some classes back and students sending emails, banging on my door. I want to come back in person. I want to come back and learn in person. Not all of them, but a good number of them. And that opened our eyes because here we thought, wow, they're always all like here, so they should love online and we should keep everything online. It was more the faculty that I had to say, I need you to come back because your students want to come back. So that kind of blew apart a sort of generalization or stereotype that we kind of had about, you know, the generation and how they're all, even in working and sometimes in meetings. And we had some people who started completely remote and we're just so happy the first few, like, to come back. Like, I feel more connected within the workplace to know some of you. This doesn't mean we throw out, you know, remote meetings. It really helps our work-life balance. But I think it taught us that there's not one way. So even in the environment where I have so many generations, the faculty who has been teaching for 30 years, and then the student who's just coming and saying, this is not how I learned. It's like, can you all sit together in a room and let's talk about what is the best approach? Because I don't think it's that everything in a certain generation is the right thing. When my parents come to visit, and I watch my teenage children. My father's a storyteller, and my teenage children who are constantly like this when I'm talking will set aside the phones and everything and sit for hours with my father listening to stories of when they were, and I'm always like, well, how are you getting them done? And now I get it, you know, grandma and grandpa are more fun than whatever mom and dad have to say, but it also teaches me that, you know what, I can't make this assumption that they constantly only want to be entertained by this and they don't. It just depends on what is being delivered, what is happening. So I would just encourage all of us not to feel, I just feel like we hear it a lot like, oh, this generation and they have all this and we all have to adapt and cave. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we hear the really good ideas and say, how can we help? And then we also bring our own wisdom and things that, you know, is tried and true. And the last thing I'll say is I was on, I went to a conference a few years ago, and I do love technology, and I had my book and on the Kindle, and it was in this lovely, lovely seasoned lady sat next to me with her hardcover book. Well, my Kindle died. And at some point, and I was going East Coast and West Coast, because a lot of my family was on the West Coast. And I know at some point, she just looked at me with a smile, and she's like, this still.
Yeah.
And I said, ma'am, you know what? You are right. And I promise you, since then, anytime I travel, I throw a hard copy in my hand, luggage, just in case. So, just saying.
Or I Google the location of an independent bookstore, like wherever I am. It's funny that Dr. Gloria brings this up because that statement that college students want to be back in person plays out around the world. Every place that we've done data on that, people want to be in person. And the other thing I'll say, 2 quick points, is that a lot of college professors I work with complain that students don't answer emails. This is a constant thing. when they hear I'm training their students, they're like, can you make them answer emails? To which I say, their whole lives have been video communication. If we didn't ever teach them how to send emails, why the hell are we expecting them to send emails? You're not getting students in the workforce now that have had jobs before, possibly. So it's a mindset shift. The other thing is that a lot of data is emerging right now that the old Nokia brick phones are making a comeback because among Gen Z, because they want more time offline. They want to be able to not be gotten a hold of. So every generation pendulum swings, and they're going to pendulum swing us back to nature, which is not, God bless them. God bless them. I'm working with my therapist right now to be less available. I'd love that to skip for them.
But the Nokia phone is also vintage, though. Just think
It's,
that
oh my God,
everything
do they love
vintage is cool
vintage?
now. Yeah.
Vintage and authenticity. Although it does scare me that like my clothes I wore in the 90s are vintage. I'm like having a whole moment.
You'll get over that.
I'm sure I will. I'm having a whole thing. Anyway, like my college students wear Crocs because they're authentic. Like they love Crocs because they're authentically themselves. I'm like, God bless. Okay.
In music that they body language. I mean, the way to speak, a lot of times they say 93, or everyone know that 90% of body language. So a lot of times in the communication, it's almost invisible. It just picks things up from looking at that person, maybe you're mentoring or that group. You can see when someone gets excited about a particular area and take note. That's what leaders do. They take note. They're aware. They're aware of their surroundings. They're aware of their people. They're people. They're your people. We come in a room today. I'm hugging half the people in here. I mean, where'd the hug go when we had to not be around? So it sounds silly or soupy, but honestly, we are humans, like you opened up with, and as frail as we all are, we use it to our ability to be what we are and what we're intended to be purposefully. And whether we're at work or with our kids or friends or all at once, it kind of carries the same mojo, doesn't it? I mean, really.
Yeah.
No, mojo is great. I'm old.
It's
I'm old.
great.
That's vintage.
I'm allowed.
It's vintage.
It is,
You're doing
it is.
great.
Thank you.
It leads in really, really well, actually, to my next question, because there's been a myth. I remember when I was coming up and going to like women in business seminars when I was in high school and college, and there was a lot of talk about like the work-life separation, which I feel dudes are a lot easier to do than ladies. And I now, as a social scientist, really think all of it's a lie. Like we always just bring everything we are everywhere we go. So there are times you can prioritize different things, but like when my brother's kid is sick, he's different at work. He's a little bit more distracted. So we've learned to kind of give context. Like if he snaps at somebody in a meeting, we're like, so Soph has a fever again. And everyone's like, okay. Like, because there's this separation I don't think has ever actually existed. We just pretended it did. And this goes into some work-life balance stuff. So a lot of work at Tabor is very intense. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And your job now is intense.
Yes,
Yes,
it
it
is.
So we joked about being masochists together a few minutes ago. What does, when I say work-life balance, what does that mean? What does it look like? How do you feel about that?
I mean, I agree with you. I think it begs the question of what balance actually is. What's the definition of balance? For me, I love what I do. That's my superpower. So I have 4 kids, a husband. I have 2 adult children, 20, 19, and then I have 2 little ones. So I have bigs and littles. And and for me, I was at Tabor while I was getting a doctorate, and I had my 4 kids and my family. So balance didn't look like I stop at 5, I get home. That was not my definition of balance. I really had to question, particularly at Tabor, what did it look like for me? And I had to really stop for a moment and say, I can't be judged like other people, right? We had a coworker, Larry, my son, my baby boy calls him the working man. That's what Michael calls Mr. Larry, the working man, because Larry was at work 12 hours a day. He was always there. So he was the working man. When I came into Tabor, I had to say, pause. You cannot judge me on the same criteria that Mr. Larry is working. I have 4 kids. I cannot be here 12 hours a day. Mr. Larry's wife is home taking care of his kids so that So again, I had to really challenge, okay, judge me on my productivity, not whether or not my butt is in a seat for 12 hours a day. So the conversation began to flip, and I began to judge people that I was working with on their productivity. And what that meant was, you have more flexibility, Lashana, because I'm not asking you to have your butt in a seat so that I can see you. I'm asking you to deliver these deliverables. And once you do that, you have your life because you are Lashana. That is your name, that is your person, that is your identity. You are not just a Tabor employee. So like all of those things came flushing into my brain, and it really did change. I mean, in 2017, I got diagnosed with a mandibular tumor, and I had to undergo jaw reconstruction surgery where my mouth was wired shut for about 8 weeks. That also made me challenge work-life balance, because guess what? When I got diagnosed and we didn't know if that was bone marrow cancer, you know what I didn't think about? Work. I'm going to be very transparent. And I already expressed I love what I do. And I still didn't think about work, because in that moment, my identity was a mom and a family person. And I had to learn to prioritize that. So like you said, one of the ways I achieve work-life balance is by being a good team member. Because when life hits, and life will hit, it will punch you dead in your face eventually. I need good teammates to step in, because when their life hits, I have to step in for them. That's what balance looked like for me.
I love that. I love that. My Monique mentioned, we're writing a book right now. My business partner and I, again, giant nerds, on the cultural foundations of burnout, which actually go back to the Puritans. Spoiler alert. And one of the things that we've learned and in research is that balance is actually a state of constant action. Balance is not static. Balance is a controlled wobble. In yoga parlance, it's a controlled wobble. So I want to offer that too. And I'll also say, just really briefly too, when I do workshops and people are like, we'll measure people on their productivity, I want to say we all need to acknowledge there are companies and businesses that cannot do that. Manufacturing cannot do that. You know, production cannot do that. So what I will tell you as somebody who owns a manufacturing plant is what that looks like is that I don't write people up for much except answering their emails after work hours. I pay you to be there from 8:30 to 5. That is when you are an Abby employee and when I need you to be helping our customers. If for your anxiety disorder, you need your email on your phone to check it, I can respect that. If I see you sending an email, I don't pay you to do that. My name's on the building, not yours. And if they need to be flexible with kids, we work that out. So if you have a set production something, there is still ways to promote work-life balance and fiercely protect your team. So I always want to offer that in case, because somebody's always like, well, I can't do that. Yes, you can. It's called innovation. You do it all the time. So welcome. Anyway, after I hijacked that, any other thoughts on work-life balance? Queen Brenda.
No, because they just went.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's like, just wanted to be fun.
Gifty, anything for you, especially as somebody who lives so far away from home?
Yes. So I think I've been fortunate to have women and a few men who have held me accountable with regards to work-life balance. I run an organization in Nigeria that is 6 hours difference. I work full-time in the US. I'm also a doctoral student. I promise you I'm not crazy, but where your heart leads you to is almost where you want to go. And for me, most times when I wake up or when it's peak hours here in the US, it's winding up time in Nigeria. I have found myself to be that leader where I want to know what my employees are doing until I paused and asked, how is this helpful to them? especially growing up in a culture where dictatorial leadership is a thing. How do I portray that differently? So I always hold myself accountable to, once it is this time and I send you an email, don't respond. It has nothing to do, and I had to copy my board members because I want them to hold me accountable. Back here, I have also had, like I mentioned, leaders who have held me accountable, whether it's in my full-time job, saying, Gifty, if you have to step away, step away. And I think as leaders, just talking about work-life balance all the time does not, tick the box. What ticks the box is holding yourself accountable and switching the power to your employees to do same. So when you switch the powers to your employees to do same, you would find out that they would hold you accountable, and because you want to be that kind of leader that keeps to your word, you would also have to respect what work-life balance looks like. And if you have to advocate for yourself, Monique knows that in the middle of school life and work life, I've had to say, hey, I need to be myself. My brain is not functioning in the work mode. Can you give me time? So if you have to advocate for yourself, do that boldly without being afraid of anything.
As the youth say. Okay, so I want to be cognizant of time. So what I'd love now is a bit of a rapid fire. All four of you can answer. We'll start here and go down. Can you give us one resource, book, movie, podcast, that in the last little bit has helped you grow your leadership? And Brenda can start, then we'll go for it. Yep.
Okay, and I submitted it to Glenda Child to make it on the list.
Okay.
Atomic Habits. Amazing. You just mentioned men compartmentalize better because women multitask better, but what we do is what I did when I lost my thought. Too much goes on at one time. So that book I just read, both of my kids had said, this is a good one, Mom.
Yeah.
And they read it, and I'm telling you.
Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits. It is,
Yeah.
I think it is fantastic. It's not altruistic at all. He walks through actually from the broad base of how do you change bad habits in a comfortable manner. I'm saying it nicely. To turn it into a good habit. But he does it with a process that kind of goes, it just works in, and the detail and examples that are used are phenomenal. Because he said, well, the only example I can think of, and I don't know why I'm thinking of this, and you don't want to go to the gym, but you should go to the gym. That's your habit, that's your balance, because work is one word. It should be work idle, but it's still work, but you're working out right in the, okay. So where was I going with my thoughts? See?
I don't know, but Atomic Habits is a great, very popular book.
Since women aren't as great at compartmentalizing, the book helps you to hone in and hone down. And remember, when you're like building a business or you're going to work, you don't have to kill it in one day. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's step-by-step processes, and it's a lot of times it's baby steps, but it's, somebody mentioned the word consistency. Mm-hmm. It's the consistency of creating new habits that not only get exciting, you get rid of some bad ones. And I don't know if that made sense, but I'm done.
It certainly does. Thank you. You got it, Dr. Gloria? Yeah?
No, go for it.
You got something? Go.
Yeah, so I'm going to lift up this book right here, which you all should have. And I'm going to lift this book up primarily because I used my dissertation in this book. And a lot of my dissertation work was on performance, organizational performance, and leadership. And the two key things that I think this book brings to light is self-reflection, because I think that's a skill that a lot of people in their growth need to have. But the other side of that coin is self-accountability, because you can reflect, but you need to hold yourself accountable on what you reflect on, or else what's the point of reflection? So I think those are two skills, and this book was a joy because I got to kind of contribute to that kind of reflection, and it's throughout the book. So this, for a different reason, the content is excellent, but it was a personal journey as well for this book two additional skills, self-reflection, self-accountability, but you get there through practicing forgiveness and patience with self as well. And I don't think a lot of people practice patience with self and forgiveness with self. Because if you can't be patient and forgiving of yourself, you're probably going to be less likely to be patient and forgiving with other people. And people make mistakes. It's what we do as humans. It's also how we learn. So if you lean into learning and you lean into that, I think that practicing forgiveness with self is very important in my own personal leadership growth.
And academics never have anybody read their dissertation, so just to like, just do it for her. No one will ever read my dissertation. Do it for her. Go ahead, yeah. Honestly, no one reads our stuff. Keep going, yeah. That's why it's a book. Yes, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I would pick on the self-reflection part you talked about because I want to make my professors proud that I talked about self-reflection. Um, I, one of the things I would strongly recommend is self-reflection and looking back to your previous experiences if you're a leader in this room, which I believe everybody is. One thing I had to do for myself is tell myself that I don't want to be a toxic leader because it's easy to take on toxic leadership, especially if you have lived that experience of if you have had toxic leaders. Because hurt people, right? People who are pained actually emit that pain to other people. So I intentionally have read or keep reading books around toxic leadership. I won't sit here to say I'm picking 1, 2, 3, because in my doctoral journey, I have had to read the books of different authors who are also speaking from personal experience, right? Self-reflection in their books. So the best recommendation coming from me to all of us sitting here is do a self-reflection and ask yourself. Another thing is asking the people you lead to do an assessment of what your leadership skills are or what they think about your leadership. Again, it's switching power to those power usually doesn't go to, right? And they'll be honest with you. Don't ask for email addresses, don't ask for names, don't ask for phone numbers. Let it be as anonymous as possible, and that would work. And then if I want to also flip through to followers as well, knowing that no leader is a leader without a follower, also looking at yourself as a follower to ask, how am I supporting the leader who is leading me or my supervisor? How can I make leadership easy for them? And so also reading about toxic followership as regards to any other thing.
Amazing. I love what you said, so I'm going to give a sort of slightly unconventional answer. I don't know if there's any students in the audience. One of the reasons I'm an educator, I'm an administrator, but I have learned so much over the years from students. Starting out as an 8th grade earth science teacher, so if you ever want to know anything about the anatomy of an earthworm, I got you right after this meeting. And we were talking, and one of the things I just want to say to all of us is give yourself grace. That's like the tagline that I live by. Give yourself grace. And part of what you were saying, because if you can't give that to yourself, you really can't give it to anyone else for things that they might do or whether they meet your expectations or not, is to give yourself grace. And we don't do that enough as women because we are given out to everybody else, so we don't pause to say, you know, how am I just giving myself some room? You know, this whole idea of compartmentalizing or work-life balance I threw all that out the window. And I would tell you why is because, as I said, I learned so much from my students over the years. When a student is sitting in my office, distraught, crying over something in life that's now affecting their academics, they're not trying to say, well, I need to just do this over here because the faculty needs this paper, or because life has happened in that moment and it is touching every facet of their life. So sometimes you have to pause and just deal with that. And then I think, wow, I may be going through something, but I don't give myself the same grace. As I'm here trying to help this student work through a solution, I'm also going through something, but I'm not giving myself, nope, I got to get the email done. No, I have to do this. I have to facilitate. And so I've been learning from the students over the years. And because I have to read a lot of program reviews and a lot of things, sadly, in recent years, I haven't gotten a lot of time to read, but I will tell you something I've done since I think I was 17 is journal. And in recent years, my journal has been less, but what I've been doing is that different quotes or things that I hear from people, I write them down, and I think that's sort of become a book for me. And so someday I'm thinking I should put this to paper, or like publish it and just say, like sayings from people over the years that I've just learned. So if that would just be for me to you, if you're someone who doesn't have time to just read, as much as you would want to, things that people say that really grab you, just write that down, because every now and then I do a self-reflection kind of retreat, or on a quiet Sunday afternoon, what are those? A quiet Sunday afternoon that occasionally I'm able to get. I just sit back and I review those sayings that people, and Gifty and I are from the same, my parents are originally from where Gifty's from, so in my book I have a lot of the African proverbs that have guided us through life that, you hear one and it just hits you like way in here, like, that makes sense. Everybody in the world should know that. So just please, if you're able to find that, if there are people in your life who have just said profound things, write it down, because that can hit you and just come together, I think, for me in a way more powerful than sometimes a book can. But I just want to leave you all with just, let's give ourselves grace. The world is hard enough on us. Life is hard enough on us. We've all come through a lot of crazy as a nation, as whatever, in the last 3 years. We're still trying to pull out of so many things, and I think we just need to pause and tell ourselves it's going to be all right, and we're all going to be all right. So,
Amen. Amen. My publisher would love that book, so just let me know. For my money, the very best leadership book on the planet is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, because the core of leadership, as far as I'm concerned, is that we ask more questions and make less assumptions of ourselves and other people. So yeah, I read it every year as much as I can. Sometimes I just read scenes, but yeah, for my money, To Kill a Mockingbird. Another round of applause for my folks. And then whenever I moderate or lead, I leave everybody with some words. I call them a benediction because that's my faith tradition, but I want to send you out with some power. May you remember that you are where you are for a reason. May you remember that your life experience has gotten you here, but so has everyone else's. May you cultivate your curiosity so that when you encounter difference, the knee-jerk is not fear. May you remember that being a woman is powerful, and it's terrifying to others because it's powerful. May you give yourself grace, and you find something today that gives you joy. Let's go eat.
So, ladies, before you leave up here,
Well, here's something else that doesn't happen at academic. Four meetings, ever. Have I ever gotten flowers? Yeah.
My boss is in the office. I think we should, in the room, I think we should give flowers at meetings.
You're welcome.
and one more, Kathy. Just one more.
Yeah, and it's so much of my work with clients. Sometimes I was like, if we could all just go back to kindergarten, what problems can be solved?
Okay.
Are they a nap, a snack, or a hug? Like,
Just one.
yeah.
let's start there.
you
Everyone needs a nap and a snack.
All right. Wait, and we have cards too. And I think that my handwriting is pretty nice, so I like handwritten cards. Again, thank you so much.